had what's called cognitive diversity. They had different ways of looking at things, different perspectives. They had different heuristics for fighting and defending and for planning, and they combined those things. They also had different sort of interpretations and predictive models and these things that brain scientists talk about make our way of viewing the world different. But the summary is they had these groups of people who thought different, who set aside the things they didn't like about each other to teach each other things that made them better. And when you look at the so-called math of synergy, of groups that add up to more and why it doesn't usually happen, the thing that makes the difference is having different ways of thinking and actually combining them and then being willing to adapt because of that. So those are the three ingredients of what I define as dream teams. Two heads are only better than one if they think differently. Otherwise, they are only as good as the smartest one of those similar heads, or the most powerful one in too many cases. You have a group of people that think similarly, they can only possibly think as smart as the smartest or most powerful person. If you have a group of people who think differently and they're willing to engage and mix, then you have the potential of those mental models. But the reason I tell this story is because not only are there case studies like in my company, but there's actual research that shows that the most successful salespeople are the ones that help each other out. Also, the least successful salespeople are the ones that help each other out. It turns out that the difference between those two groups is if you help other people at the expense of the long-term success, then that's a bad thing. So if you're spending all of your time helping other people out and you're not getting your work done, that ends up being a problem for everyone. But if you help other people out with the big picture in mind, that ends up, the salespeople that do that end up far exceeding the salespeople who are just really good at what they do. Of this research, cognitive diversity mixed together, what I call cognitive friction, seeking out different ways of seeing and doing things and seeing what you can learn from them, and then intellectual humility, willingness to adapt. There's so much research that shows that this is what makes a team work better than the sum of its parts. But the thing that often prevents us from doing this is even when we have people in our groups who think differently, we want to get along and we want to be nice to each other and treat each other well because that's extremely important. And we want to keep the group together. And so we shy away from the conflict that comes from expressing different ideas or different opinions or working with people who don't agree with you. And so when we shy away from that, we reduce our potential. And yet when you invite conflict, the kind that's about ideas, that's not personal, it's not about, beating each other, then you actually can become smarter together as a team. The concept there is called intellectual humility. And it's basically this idea that whatever has worked for you in the past may not be the best way to achieve what you need to in the future. And recognizing that means that you'll be open to other people's perspectives. You'll be open to working with people who aren't necessarily your favorite people or who have different things that they like or do or approach the world. And you'll recognize that that's okay, and that's actually helpful to you changing and evolving, growing. And as you're trying to scale the team, add new team members, and really have a great dynamic, instead of thinking about how people can come in and fit the way you do things and fit your culture, think about how people can add to the way you do things and add to your culture. Instead of culture fit, look for culture add. Think about every new person on the team or every person that you could potentially be working with or who's across the Zoom call that you don't do much with. Think about what they could do to add to your process and your culture and what you could do to the same.